Elizabeth Warren is now the senator from Massachusetts. That's fantastic. Now, she was the person who pushed for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. They thought that that was unrealistic and that would never happen, except, in fact, it did happen. She was very effective in getting that done. The Republicans blocked her nomination to become the head of the bureau that she created. Well, she said, okay, great. I'll go and join you in the Senate. Oops. Be careful what you wish for. So now she's going to go talk to CNBC about her new bill. And what they basically want to do is reinstitute Glass-Steagall. Now, what Glass-Steagall did is really important. It passed back in 1933, and it actually created a great era of stability in banking. It separated out the part of the bank where you deposit your money from the part of the bank where they do investment banking. And basically, the kind way of putting it is they invest their own money, or you can say they gamble with their own money. The reason you separate that out is because you don't want them gambling with your money. Right? Because when they are allowed to gamble with your money, they take more risks. Because the downside is for you and the upside is for them. So now when we took Glass-Steagall away, at the end of Bill Clinton's term, by the way, it wound up being an absolute disaster. So now, interestingly, Elizabeth Warren has paired up with Republican Senator John McCain to bring it back and say, don't gamble with depositors' money. Very sensible. But when she goes on CNBC, ooh, they don't like that idea at all. Because CNBC basically represents the bankers. If they were PR flags for the bankers, they couldn't do a better job. Now, the first question by one of the anchors was fine. She aggressively challenged her, saying, well, some of the top bankers say that your bill would hurt competitiveness. Of course, that's what they always say. They say, keep letting me gamble with your money. But that's fine. She's challenging a United States senator on the opposing view on her bill. Okay, no problem at all. Now, when Elizabeth Warren starts talking about the facts of regulation of banks in this country, that's when it gets interesting. You're going to see CNBC personality Brian Sullivan step in here to correct the record, except he gets his own ass corrected. Watch.
Senator, I will push back, though, on the relative security that you're portraying Glass-Steagall to have given us, because Continental Illinois in the early 80s was the seventh largest bank in America. It failed, almost set off basically another major banking crisis. Shouldn't we just tell the American consumer that no matter what we do, there will be bank boom and bust cycles, no matter what the laws and regulations? You can't protect everything.
No, that is just wrong.
Why?
Look at the history.
I have looked at history. We're filled with booms and busts from the Dutch tulip crisis to now.
From 1797 to 1933, the American banking system crashed about every 15 years. In 1933, we put good reforms in place for which Glass-Steagall was the centerpiece. And from 1933 to the early 1980s, that's a 50-year period, we didn't have any of that. None. We kept the system steady and secure. And it was only as we started deregulating, you start hitting the S&L crisis, and what did we do? We deregulated some more. And then you hit long-term capital management at the end of the 90s, and what did we do as a country? This country continued to deregulate more. And then we hit the big crash in 2008. You are not going to defend the proposition that regulation can never work.
I didn't say regulation never worked, Senator, by far and away. And I agree, there were fewer bank failures in that time after Glass-Steagall.
Fewer, as in, of the big ones, zero.
But Continental Illinois was the seventh biggest bank in the United States when it failed.
It took 50 years to get there.
Okay, that was awesome. So, first of all, he's like, nah, you got to understand, no matter what we do, we're always going to have bank crashes. Now, why does he say that? Because the banks always say, oh, don't do regulation. It doesn't matter. Just, oh, the world's a crazy place. Nothing we can do. So don't regulate us. Let us keep gambling with your money, right? And, of course, every anchor on CNBC is a lapdog for the banks. So they just do their talking about, Senator, let me correct the record on this one. And then she comes in with this giant elbow. Bam! She's like, wait, hold on. Let's do a little bit of history. Glass-Steagall passed in 1933. 50 years of zero crashes. What happened to there's nothing we can do? Then you begin to deregulate in the 1980s, immediately a crash. That's, of course, when Reagan came in. You deregulate a little bit more, S&L crisis. Then you do the major deregulation. You take away Glass-Steagall at the end of around 1999, 2000, at the end of Clinton's term, And then just 8 years later, the biggest crash we've had since the Depression. Waves of deregulation leading to waves of gigantic crashes. When we had tight regulation, 50 years of no crashes. And then I love that the guy had the temerity to say, well, I didn't say no regulation is the right answer, or that it doesn't work. No, actually you did. You literally said, no matter what we do, there's nothing we can do about the bank crashes. So, but she's not quite done kicking their ass yet. One more round.
Glass-Steagall would not have prevented the financial crisis.
Not all by itself, that's absolutely right. But what Glass-Steagall can do is it can wind some more of the risk out of the system. It can help bring down the size of the largest banking institutions. Don't forget, you said there was too much concentration in the banking industry in 2008. Now here we are in 2013, and the big four are 30% bigger. That puts too much risk back in the system.
Well, there's other ways of shrinking them, obviously. But
with all due respect, Senator, every report I've read, every person I've spoken to says that there's a very, very, very slim chance of this even passing.
Well, let me put it this way. If you don't fight for it, the chances are zero.
3 different anchors came at her. And I love the excuse of the second male anchor there who's like, you seem to have gotten all the facts right, but there's probably other ways of fighting them other than your bill. Really? Which ones do you support? Oh, right. None of the CNBC anchors ever support any of the ways of re-regulating the banks or putting any control of their risk or gambling with our money on the banks. You don't support any of those bills. But when she's got you dead to rights, you're like, well, yeah, your bill, whatever, right? There's probably other bills. No, there aren't. And do you support any of them? No, you don't, because you work for the banks. CNBC is really disgusting, actually. And then finally, the last thing that they got is, okay, you beat us on all that, but it's not going to pass anyway. Well, I'll tell you what, Senator. I'm not sure I'm doing her accent right there. I don't know anybody who thinks that this bill can pass, because the rest of the senators are bought off by the banks. So, it's not going to work anyway. What are you wasting your time for? She's like, well, that's the same thing you guys told me on the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and I believe that exists. And by the way, that's your best argument, CNBC, after you get your ass handed to you? Well, the rest of the senators are with us, basically the corrupt people who all work for the banks. But 3 wasn't enough. So Jim Cramer, another CNBC anchor, had to pile in. He wasn't on the show, so he tweeted afterwards, quote, there's some weird strain of thought that CNBC got beaten by Senator Warren. Well, I like the senator, but she had no impact. Sorry. She seemed to have an impact right on top of their heads. But basically, he's going back to that talking point saying, she's not going to have an impact because we got the rest of Congress bought, so she's not going to have an impact. That bill's not going to pass. It's not going to pass. Otherwise, the banks might endanger the money that we get over here at CNBC. You're pathetic. I liked how she regulated on you. Warren G like a gangster.